Chapter 9, Plate Tectonics. You can see here in this front screen there's a colorful picture of all of the plates. We'll actually be making one of those in class so you can see how the plates are interacting with one another. 9.1 Continental Drift. An idea before its time. Alfred Wegener was a German scientist who proposed the theory of continental drift in 1912. He hypothesized that the continents were slowly drifting around the Earth. His continental drift hypothesis stated that the continents had once been joined to form a single supercontinent. Remember, in 1912, they didn't have the type of technology that we have today to allow us to see the actual shapes and sizes of the continents, so they were very limited in their data. Wegener proposed that this supercontinent, that he named Pangaea, which means all land, began to break apart 200 million years ago and form the present land masses. However, Wegener was unable to explain why, which meant his hypothesis was not accepted until the 1950s. There were numerous discoveries provided at the 1950s that were not available in 1912, and all of this helped provide this evidence of this continental drift. Here we can see the breakup of Pangaea from your textbook. You can see in the top 250 million years ago, Pangaea was one big giant continent and there was a Tethys Sea. It doesn't exist anymore, but at the time that's what it was. As it began to break apart 200 million years ago, we see Laurasia forming and we see Gondwanaland. 100 million years ago, the continents continued drifting apart and we start to see the beginnings of those land masses that we recognize today as our continents. 50 million years ago, Australia began separating from Antarctica. In the present time, you can see all of the different continents in their respective places. The evidence provided includes rock types and structures. There's rock evidence for continental drift existing in the form of several mountain belts that end at one coastline, such as Great Britain, only to reappear on a landmass across the ocean, our Appalachian Mountains. Those rock evidence gives us the chance to see that at one time there's identical mountain ranges on both continents that couldn't have just magically appeared. They had to have been formed at the same time. The ancient climates also gives rise to, we can see that there were swampy conditions at one time in the past, there were dry conditions, there were glaciers. All of these things affected the rock record, and that affects what we see now. The continental puzzle. If we go back and we look, some of these continents look like puzzle pieces. They look like they should belong together, almost like a jigsaw. And finally, matching fossils. On different continents, we see the results of organisms that lived millions of years ago that couldn't have traveled across the globe. They were very localized. Matching those fossils gives us a chance to see that certain continents had to have been close together at one time. Our fossil evidence we can see here on the different land masses, the distribution of the Mesosaurus fossils. That's what supported the argument that South America and Africa had once been joined. Matching those types of rocks from the different mountain belts today also provide evidence for continental drift. Here we can see the Caledonian Mountains in the British Isles and our Appalachian Mountains. If we slide those puzzle pieces together, we can see here that it formed one long continuous mass of mountains. Also, you may notice this light blue color here. What that's representing is the part of the continental shelf that's underwater. So if you remember in the movie Finding Nemo, the fish were swimming out to the drop-off. That drop-off is the edge of the continental shelf where it enters the deep ocean. Wegener found glacial deposits showing that between 220 and 300 million years ago, there were ice sheets that covered large areas of the southern hemisphere. Deposits of glacial till occurred at latitudes that today have temperate or tropical climates, such as South Africa, South America, India, Australia. So what we think of today as being warm or tropical places in the southern hemisphere were at one time covered by ice sheets or glaciers. So the only way was if they were all together. Rejecting this hypothesis, a new theory emerges. While Wagner couldn't provide an explanation of exactly what made the continents move, new technology led to findings which then led to the theory that we now call the plate tectonic theory. The main objection to Wagner's hypothesis was that he couldn't describe the mechanism capable of moving continents. These are giant pieces of land.